Welcome back to another tabletop review. Today we'll look at the Franklin Armory Binary Firing System for the Ruger 1022. It's been a while since I reviewed an accessory. I thought it was time, and this would be a good one. The Franklin Armory Binary Trigger for the Ruger 1022. I bought the Franklin Armory BFS or Binary Firing System-III a while ago to install in my Ruger Charger. I've had to say that my Ruger Charger was already one heck of a fun gun on the range. I had added a folding stock and a suppressor earlier, and my wife gave me an XOP-IN combo scope, laser, and red dot for my birthday a while back. But I just thought there was one more thing I could do to make this Charger truly outstanding. Add a binary trigger. Now you might be asking, what's a binary trigger? Well, take a look at this. So a binary trigger, a term introduced by Franklin Armory, is a three-position selectable trigger. There's the safe mode, there's semi-automatic mode, which is the standard mode we're used to, and then there's binary mode, in which the trigger fires when pulled but also fires when released. This allows for extremely rapid firing, as I just demonstrated. By the way, the binary mode can be disengaged even after you've pulled the trigger, but before releasing for fire by just resetting the lever for either binary mode or for safety. That's basically it. So why did I buy it? Well, I think that's fairly obvious. This turns a pretty cool gun into a truly awesome day at the range. It could also turn this rather meek 22 into a potentially potent weapon. Think about being able to send a hail of bullets, even 22s, at 600 rounds a minute downrange. But at $300, is the Federal Armory Binary Firing System worth the cost, and does it live up to these expectations? Actually, binary triggers have been around for some time and are usually found on larger weapons like the AK or the AR. In fact, Franklin Armory, an American company located in Nevada, is known for its AR triggers. Franklin Armory also makes binary triggers for CZ Evo Scorpions, AKs, H&K G3 type rifles, and oh yeah, the Bushmaster ACR. And there's another company by the name of Fostech that also makes binary type triggers for ARs as well. Both Franklin Armory and Fostech triggers have good reputations as solid, proven, and reliable. As far as I know, however, Franklin Armory is the only company making binary triggers for the 1022. So how does a binary trigger work? Well, first let's look at semi-automatic mode. Okay, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to remove this magazine, which is empty, and I'm going to install a 10-round magazine with dummy loads installed in them. That's so that we can pull the trigger here without any damage. Alright, so I'm going to cock it, load a round in. Okay, so when I pull the trigger in the semi-automatic mode, let's just flip it over there, the sear drops to release the hammer, which strikes the firing pin. Now after the firing pin has been fired, the hammer recocks, and the disconnector holds the trigger in the forward position. When the trigger is released, the disconnector releases the hammer and the shear catches the hammer. Now the trigger is ready to fire again. As for binary mode, a binary trigger uses two sears and gives two shots, one for pull and one for release. Putting it over into binary mode, when I pull the trigger and fire the gun, the hammer recocks, and the disconnector grabs the hammer to restrict automatic fire. But before the trigger is released, a secondary sear grabs the hammer. When the trigger is released, the second sear drops to release the hammer to fire the next round. Now the shooter can interrupt the binary mode by moving the selector to semi-automatic or to safe mode. Well, about now you probably should be asking yourself whether binary triggers are legal. It's a good question because, at least as of today, binary triggers are indeed legal according to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. But that's just at the federal level. You still need to check out your state and local laws. It's not available in California, for example. By the way, technically, a binary trigger is considered semi-automatic because each trigger movement in binary mode is distinct and results in only one shot per trigger movement. As for installation, the packaging says easy to install. I found that to be highly dependent on your definition of easy. Personally, I found the installation of the selector detent and spring for the selector shaft to be unnerving, and the Franklin Armory instruction manual to be somewhat vague and incomplete in spots. However, if you possess a reasonable level of skill and perhaps a tad more confidence, you should be fine. I'll go ahead and review the entire process here, and I do have a few suggestions that will hopefully make the experience less stressful. I recommend that you lay out all of the new parts and position them in the order that you'll be using them according to the installation manual. You'll note that the trigger disconnector and spring and intermittent disconnector spacer and spring, as well as the temporary slave or guide pin or rod, are pre-assembled. Don't take this apart unless you enjoy additional misery. First, we need to remove and dismantle and clean the trigger guard assembly on the 1022 in which you'll be installing the new system, which I've already done. But you need to hang on to the parts because we'll be using some of them during the reassembly. These are the OEM or original equipment manufacturer parts. In addition to the original housing, the parts we'll need are the trigger spring plunger, but not the original spring. We'll be using a new spring for that. The trigger pin, the hammer pin, magazine latch, pivot and ejector pins. And although the manual does not show it, you'll also need the original bolt lock or catch spring, the magazine latch plunger and spring, the ejector, and the two original receiver cross pins. We'll use those to reassemble the unit back into the stock. The assembly needs to be clean because you want to ensure that the provided stickers are going to actually stick to them. Now, if you're following the Franklin Armory installation manual, this takes us to steps 5 and 6, installation of the selector shaft, selector detent spring, and the selector detent. You'll need a good light safety glasses. I like to use just slightly magnified glasses. Non-magnetic tweezers. They suggest needle nose pliers. I never really found any that they really worked very well. You also need a 3/32 and a 5/32 punches and a large plastic bag or an old sheet. The plastic bag is used to contain any springs or parts that might go flying. So what's with the sheet? I'm not going to actually go through this part of the assembly because there was a lot of swearing and other unprintable nonsense going on when I did this for real. Instead, let me just walk you through it. The sheet is used instead of the plastic bag. I use it to cover myself and everything I'm working on down to the table surface. That way, if the spring comes flying out, which it probably will the first time you try this, it won't go flying 10 feet away. I've used this method many times before and it eliminates the glare problem of the plastic bag and trying to work through the plastic bag. Both methods should reduce your stress level considerably if you know you aren't in danger of losing parts in the process, so trust me on this. First thing we need to be able to do is to insert the selector shaft into the right side of the trigger guard assembly. You can see over here on the right hand side it has the paddle attached and it's all the way inserted, and what we are going to do is I'm just going to walk you through it. This little unit right here, this is the original detent and spring, and as you can see, they're very small, and they're in quite a bit of pressure as well. The new one, which is installed here in this unit, is indeed under pressure, and it will spring out. I'll put a little light on it here, and you can kind of see down in there. If you look underneath that shaft, you can see that spring-loaded detent is in there. Now, to install the shaft, there's a flat side on the left of the shaft, and if you use the punch to hold the detent down and then slide the flat end of the shaft over that detent and spring assembly, once the detent is caught by the shaft, the flat side of the shaft, you can remove the punch and then push it all the way through from the right hand side. That's basically what's trying to be accomplished. You've just completed the worst part of the assembly after you've accomplished that particular step. Next, we'll insert the new trigger spring and the old trigger spring plunger in the hole behind the trigger, and where it's right there. We're going to depress it and hold it. Now we'll drop the new trigger assembly into the housing and align the slave pin with the trigger pin hole in the housing. When you insert the old trigger pin in, it will drive out the slave pin and secure the trigger assembly to the housing. Steps 9 through 12 involve installing the new hammer. Place the new hammer spring on the hammer and add the spacers to each side. Add the old bolt catch spring with the dog-legged end facing down. Insert the hammer assembly into the housing so that the hammer spring legs rest on the trigger assembly. The old hammer pin should run through the new hammer assembly. Next, you should be able to move the selector to fire and pull the trigger back and seat it. Next, we'll tackle the magazine latch plunger, the bolt lock, and the ejector, beginning with steps 13 through 18 of the manual. Insert the old magazine latch plunger, spring, and bolt lock or catch into the housing. Align the holes so they're open. You should be able to drive the pins back through now. From the right hand side, insert the old ejector pin, pivot pin, into the housing, pressing down on the straight leg of the old bolt catch spring, and insert the pin so the leg is under the pin. Now align the hole on the old ejector so the pin can be pushed through to the left side of the housing. Finally, we'll assemble the new unit into the stock following steps 19 through 23. First, remove the safety selector paddle from the right-hand side. This will allow the unit to slide into the stock. Just like the old safety had to be centered, on this unit we have to remove the paddles for clearance. From here, you assemble the gun as normal. Of course, we have to attach the safety selector paddles on both sides. It's suggested that you use blue Loctite. The last thing you need to do is to follow the prescribed function test that comes with the manual. Don't skip this. This is important.
As for range experience, there's no doubt that the Franklin Armory Binary System turned my Ruger Charger into the most fun I've had at the range in a while. What a hoot to shoot! The binary trigger really works, and works smoothly except for the usual 22 misfire. And I was surprised at how easy it was to hold on target. Even at 24 yards, I could maintain a good 6 to 8 inch spread while unloading 25 round magazine in about 2 seconds. Truly outstanding. As for cons, certainly $299 is a lot to pay for a trigger upgrade for a gun that I paid less than that for new. But Franklin Armory is the only producers of this product for the 1022, and their binary system is indeed a quality product. I think they need to improve their installation manual. It's okay if you're familiar enough with the stock 1022's trigger assembly already. It isn't difficult to work through the process, but for $300, wouldn't it be great if you got the whole assembly completely ready to just drop in as a replacement? That'd be really cool. As for pros, in the end, the Franklin Armory Binary Trigger System for the Ruger 1022 delivers. It works as promised and it feels like a solid natural upgrade. For me, it gives my charger a whole new level of significance in my collection. And it's just so much fun to shoot. I love it. Alright, so let's wrap it up by going back to my original questions. Does it work and was it worth it? Oh yeah, it certainly works. As for whether it was worth the $300 it cost, well, for me, I think so, but you'll need to judge that for yourself. I could have spent the $300 it costs on a new pistol, I suppose, but this binary trigger elevates my charger into a level of rapid-fire trigger performance that no other gun in my collection can match. Certainly the installation process had its challenges. However, for me, it sort of adds to the personal satisfaction and enjoyment of this gun. Doing this installation myself, but then I enjoy working on guns almost as much as I do shooting them. So that's just me. Okay, given what this gun is like now compared to what it was, yes, I'd say it's definitely worth it. On the range in binary mode, you totally forget about what it cost or whatever difficulties you had installing it. You're just too busy smiling your head off. Any weapon you carry is better than the one you left at home. Thanks for watching. Hope you'll be back for my next tabletop review. Until next time, stay safe.